Welcome to the LALIFF Music Panel, Women in the Music Industry, presented by BMI. I'm Alexis de la Rocha, and I am the Director of Music Programming for LALIFF. It is with pure joy that I invite you to join us for an intimate conversation with the powerhouse reinas of the music industry, Leila Cobo and Alex Flores. Leila Cobo is the world's leading expert in music, a brilliant writer, a prolific published author, and vice president of Latin content for Billboard. Amazing. And Alex Flores is a powerhouse music executive who oversees teams all over the United States and internationally as senior vice president of creative at BMI, the Broadcast Music Inc. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts for checking out LALIFF Music and for joining us for this delightful panel where we get to see two women dive deep into each other's journeys, conversations, and have fun together. Let's go together and let's listen to their experiences and successes while navigating through the ever-changing music industry.
Welcome to BMI's panel, Mujeres en la Industria. I'm Alex Flores, BMI Senior Vice President of Creative. Today, we have a very special guest joining us. She's a classically trained pianist, journalist, author, friend, colleague, mother, wife, and an industry maven. She currently serves as the Vice President Latin Industry Lead at Billboard. And amongst her many duties, she oversees and curates the programming for Billboard's Latin Music Week, one of the most successful and sought after conferences in our business. Throughout her career, she has interviewed the biggest names, from Ricky Martin to Shakira, Rosalia, Karol G, Tiny, just to name a few. And she has also written several books. Tell Me Something True, Jenny Rivera, The Incredible Story of a Warrior Butterfly, The Second Time We Met, and most recently, Decoding Despacito. Please help me welcome Leila Cobo. Leila, bienvenida a nuestro panel. ¿Cómo estás?
Muy bien, Alex. Thank you for that beautiful interview. Qué rico estar aquí contigo. I'm sorry it's not in person, pero bueno.
La que sigue será en persona.
Okay, ojalá.
Bueno, primero que nada, déjame empezar por decir que muchísimas gracias por estar con nosotros y muchísimas gracias por permitirnos ponerte de aquel lado del micrófono. Generalmente tú eres la que está haciendo las preguntas. Y ahora nos toca a nosotros. So we're going to put you in the hot seat for a minute. We'll be gentle.
It's stressful. It's stressful.
Well, now you know what we go through. Well, throughout your career, you've had the opportunity to interview some of the biggest names in our industry. And I'm not just referring to songwriters and artists. I'm also talking about music executives. You've had an intimate look to people's journeys, struggles, careers, milestones, and all of the above and then some. My question to you is, we all have to start somewhere. What was your journey and who gave you your big break?
Oh my gosh. Well, I agree with you. I think the hardest step is the very first one. That first significant job is it's so difficult to get, first of all, and then you're finally there. But then I believe it's a series of many little steps. But I would say that I had a couple of big breaks that were very significant in my career. One was my first media job in the US, which was as a production assistant in Fox News in Los Angeles, in the daily news station, and the one in Sunset Boulevard, since you're all in LA. So back then, production assistant meant I would be allowed to assign stories and stuff like that, but I also had to get coffee and run to the dry cleaners and do all of that stuff. But that was like my first job in media in the US. I was very excited. And then I would say my big break was I got a job at the Los Angeles Times. And the way I got it, I think, exemplifies many things. It exemplifies the power of networking. And it also shows, it's a great example of women helping other women, because I shifted to Telemundo. At that point, I wanted to be a television journalist, obviously. And I met this wonderful woman called Clara Potesfelo. And Clara was Colombian like me. She was a Fulbright scholar like me. She was slightly older, and she was the spokesperson for the Department of Water and Power for Southern California. And we became friends. And one day she called me and she said, you know, there's a job at the LA Times as a copy editor. And I said, what is a copy editor? I had no idea what that
I
was.
was about to ask you that.
I was like, what's a copy editor? Because I hadn't done print news at that time. And she said, oh, it's, you know, I'll teach you. And I said, I've never done this. And she said, it doesn't matter. They're looking for someone who's bilingual and who can write well in English and Spanish. And they haven't found anyone in Spanish. And I went to her house, and over the weekend, she sat me down and like gave me all these copy editing tests and like taught me the basics of copy editing, so that when I went to the LA Times and took a test, because they made me take a test, I guess I don't think I passed it with flying colors, but I don't think I was an embarrassment either. And that was, I would say, my big break. And it was the result of luck, of speaking Spanish, of Clara having not only said there's a job, but I'm going to help. I'm personally going to help you prepare to get this job. And I will never forget that.
Well, a big thank you to Clara, because it got you here. And we all get to be part of your journey, and you are doing amazingly.
And once I was there, that's when I started writing about music, because I thought there has to be a way to make these two worlds come together. And people at the Times, the jazz music critic, gave me a chance to start writing reviews, and that's how I got started. But the big foot in the door was the job.
Amazing. Now, what have you seen in your experience as a common denominator skill set amongst top executives in this industry? You know, you mentioned right now being bilingual is something that helped, right? You helped your journey, but what else have you seen?
I've thought about this quite a bit, and there's two things that I think I see all the time. One is that they really work very hard. I mean, they really do. The executives I know who don't work as hard are no longer around. So I think the successful ones really are tireless, and they're very, this is going to sound ridiculous, but they answer their phone calls and they answer their emails. Like they recognize what's important, and they're very responsive. I always say that the difference between the top executives and like the up and coming, like, or the medium level executives, it often takes me weeks to get a medium level executive to return an email. And the chairman of the company, you write them and they answer right away. I think being responsive is super important, especially right now when our industry moves so fast. I think you have to be very quick, adaptable, and just willing to put in the work.
And engage for sure, right? Getting back to people quickly. Yes, absolutely.
Very. It's a very changing environment. If you're not, I don't see how you can last in this particular industry.
Well, most recently, you published an article on working mothers where you highlighted struggles and challenges in an effort to spotlight the expectations on working moms. Now, as a working mom yourself, what advice would you give other working mothers?
Oh my gosh, I didn't think you were going to ask that. I would say advocate for yourself. I was very, very lucky in that when I had my babies, which is a while ago, but fortunately we were already able to work remotely. And so I've been working remotely since the very beginning. And I was at the LA Times actually when I got pregnant. And I remember my husband, as you know, is a musician. So he used to work these very odd hours. He worked in the evenings. And I thought, I'm a Metro reporter. At the time I was a Metro reporter. This isn't going to work. I'm going to need to be able to work from home, because we were both going to have these erratic schedules. And they told me I couldn't work from home. They wouldn't allow it back then. And so I left that job and I took a job at City Hall for a brief time, where they had a daycare center in City Hall. It was pretty great. But then when I went back to journalism, that was a condition of my employment. I said, if you want me to work for you, I need to be able to work from home at least part of the time. And that's always what I've done. When I moved to Miami, I said, I will move if I can work from home. And so very early on, I established that that was the way I worked. And as long as you deliver what you need to do and you do what you need to do, I think people are open to it. But you need to ask, Alex. I mean, I think that when the systems aren't in place, you need to ask for them and you need to build them. Doesn't mean that people are always going to say yes, because they won't. But I would say you need to advocate for yourself. And I wish I'd done it more. You know, when I look back and I think of all the little microaggressions you get when you're a working mom, I thought, you know, I should have put my foot down there. I should have put my foot down there. But hey, here we are. And it was, I think overall, I did better than most in terms of being able to be with my kids.
And did you think you maybe weren't as vocal because at the time, perhaps you didn't pick up on the microaggression, or you were, you know, there's times, honestly, personally, where I am on the go and I have to pause in order to think about, oh, wait, what was that just happened?
You're kind of terrified of losing your job, I think, especially when you're young. So I think I lumped a lot of things because I was young and my children were young, and I was afraid that I would have repercussions. In the article that I wrote, where I interviewed you, as a matter of fact, I had an example of, we had just moved to Miami. I was supposed to go cover a reggae fest. I always remember this. And in Bayside Amphitheater, and the babysitter didn't arrive. And my husband was out playing. And, you know, he was working, he had a concert, and I was like calling everybody I knew. I had just arrived here. I couldn't find a babysitter. And so I called my editor and I said, listen, I'm so sorry, I won't be able to go. I couldn't find a babysitter. And I fully expected her to say, listen, don't worry, those things happen. Sometimes the babysitters flake. And she was like, you know, this can't happen again. And I was like, oh my God. So, and it wasn't like it was Billy Joel's goodbye concert either, right? It was, and I'm not saying that it wasn't an important concert, of course it was, but it wasn't anything that was like a absolute must do. And I was like, oh my God, this can't happen again. I just like went into like a 10th gear. And there were always little things like that. Like I remember one time I was like, I got to the office. I would get to the office like at 9:30 when I went to the office, because I would drop her off at daycare. And they had assigned this great trip to someone else because, well, you weren't here to take the call. And I was like, I was on my way, like, oh, well, you know, no one else had kids at the time. So maybe that was part of the problem. But little things like that, I think now I would be more vocal about, hey, you got to be more considerate. But I also thought, wow, I'm working home 2 days a week. No one else is doing that. I can't ask for too much. And you never think, well, I can ask for a lot because I'm doing a lot.
Right.
It's not like I'm asking for a lot, but I'm doing less. No, I'm doing more. Exactly, so that I can justify this. And I think that now I've come to a place where I'm like, you know, I think you're getting everything you need and much more. So, but of course now my kids are grown, so I don't care.
What would you say was your biggest takeaway, Leila, from listening to these stories and other people's experiences, all these women that are balancing or trying to balance motherhood and work? And
You know, Alex, I loved listening to them because I always thought that I was, you know, you start to think you're the only one, right? You're like, I'm the only one who has these issues. I'm the only one who can't go to the parent-teacher meeting at 10 in the morning. Like, why do they do that? Why do they have the parent-teacher meetings in the middle of the morning instead of like at the end, in, you know, in the beginning of the day or at the end of the day? Like, I always thought it was just me. And then hearing, And I always thought I was the only one who was so conflicted, because you always think, oh my God, I'm not doing this right. And I failed my kid, but now I can't give enough to work. And you're in this constant internal battle. And speaking with all these women, you realize, A, that you're not alone. And which was incredibly heartening. And also that each person copes with things in different ways. And then, you know what I loved that I never thought for myself when my children were younger, was how many women told me that their biggest advice is you need to be kind to yourself, and you need to cut yourself some slack. And I really wish someone had told me that before, had said, you know, you need to be kind to yourself. You're doing okay. You can, like, I don't know, go be alone in your corner for half an hour and the kids can watch Barney and nothing is going to happen and it's fine. So I wish, I thought that was beautiful advice.
I agree. And I think only with experience, right, do we get there, because we're trying to sometimes overcompensate for something that we really don't need to overcompensate if we're doing the job that we're supposed to be doing. And in your case.
And now, you know, so many things that you couldn't do before, like now, especially with COVID, working from home is the norm. And so people hear the kids crying. When I did my interviews, I'm in my office and I still have a big sign that in my door that says, the door is closed, do not come in. So that when I was doing interviews, the kids wouldn't burst in, because then there would be like this like hostile silence on the other side, and you would be like, shh. This was like every day.
Right. Well, now with Zoom, I think, you know, at least in my case, for the last 2 years, my kids kind of just, you know, obviously I was doing an interview where they would come up and just say hi to whomever was talking on Zoom. It's just became part of their lives, part of the norm.
Yeah, exactly.
So, you know, from your perspective, especially after speaking with so many women, and you do a lot for women in music, and on behalf of all the women in music that you are always championing, a big thank you to you for really opening doors and being so supportive and always being available to all of us for guidance and opportunities. Would you say, Leila, looking back and looking at where you are at now and many of your colleagues, female colleagues, has it become easier for women to have a seat at the table?
I think so. I think at least at the executive level, very much so. I mean, I'm a journalist and I was always in the side of media. Now in Billboard, I do other things beyond editorial. I do a lot of, I mean, it's kind of a hybrid position, but in the industry in general, I see many, many more women in all kinds of positions, Alex. And this is great, because it's not just that they need to be on top, right? There needs to be a feeding, it needs to come, there needs to be a whole pipeline of women who come from the entry-level jobs all the way up. And I see it all the way across, so much more than before. And then we see people like you in your position. I mean, like what you're doing, it would have been, I don't want to say it would have been unheard of, but it had not happened till you came in, actually. To have a woman in that position and to have a Hispanic woman in that position, somebody who is bilingual, who can cater to, but whose realm of action is not just Latin. That hadn't happened before, as far as I know, at BMI, and I don't think it still happens very much in very many places. So yeah, I definitely see more women in these jobs, and I think it has to do with women feeling, I hate the word empowered, really, because I feel it's so overused, but I would say with women feeling more confident of their worth. And so they're able to say, no, or to think I can be here. I deserve to be here. I think before it was hard, because we're mired in all these things, motherhood, the children, what can we ask for? What can we not ask for? And I think all those barriers are breaking down, but I think it's because women are far more confident, and that allows them to rise.
what advice would you give us that have the privilege of an amazing career and gone to your point, chairs like the one I have the privilege of sitting on a BMI? What can we do to continue to open doors so that not just women, but the next generation has a seat at the table, gets a bigger piece of the pie? It's a little easier for them to be part of something, of an industry that is so competitive, but yet in many ways, right, it's so wonderful once you get in, right? Once, to your point, you get that one shot, that opens, the door opens a little bit and you sneak in and then it closes right behind you, but you're in. What can we do so that door opens a little bit more and it continues to open more and more?
Well, I think, and I was thinking back of your previous question as well, because I said I see many more women at the company level, right, at the executive levels, and in all areas of the music business, and in radio, in Spotify, in the streaming companies, in the labels, in the publishing companies. But I didn't mention in the actual creative side. And that's where I think that we really lack. And that's where I think that we can really help each other. In the creative side, there's many more female artists now. There's like a whole new crop that's rising in the charts, but we're still very, very behind, especially in the Latin music realm, in terms of female songwriters, female producers, much less than songwriters, female engineers, much less than producers and songwriters. I mean, there's really, I don't remember the statistic, but there's a huge, huge lack of women in these three areas. And I think that it's key to have them there. And when you start having women who are writing songs for other women, that really opens the door for more female songwriters to come in. You know, before it was all male songwriters. Not that there aren't great male songwriters, of course there are. But sometimes you want a female point of view. You know, sometimes I want to tell my story through a woman's eyes or through a woman's sensibility. And really, there were so few before. And I find that the more you have that, the more you have songwriters, female songwriters, they bring more other female songwriters. They work in song camps that maybe are more conducive to having women there. And then producers, likewise, you know, the producer and engineer's job, it's tough. You're in a studio all night, you know, they begin working at midnight and they're out there, they're there till 7 in the morning. So maybe you work with a crew that has a different schedule if you have kids at home and you don't want that schedule, you know what I mean? But I think that the more women that are in these positions and bring in other women, the more the door opens. I don't want to say as women, we have to help other women, but I think that when we see other women who are good at what they do, yeah, we should definitely try and help them. It doesn't mean this is not charity work. You know, I think that this is really important to say. It's not that I'm giving work to someone who's undeserving. No, I'm allowing somebody who deserves the opportunity to have the opportunity. That's, I think, a responsibility. And to say, you know what? This person is really great. She hasn't gotten a chance. I can help her. And then from there, and then they're on their way, right? It's like when babies learn how to walk, they learn how to walk and then you're off. But at least I'll help you stand up and take the first step.
Yes, and recognizing that talent and perhaps nurturing that talent alongside or making introductions on behalf of that talent. I think
very important to have someone make introductions for you. I mean, you're not, they have to finish it, but opening that door is really so key. It's so key. It's so important. So I think that if people come to you and they've obviously put in the work and they're prepared and they're willing to learn and they're open, I think it behooves us to say, okay, you know what? I'll keep my eyes open. If I see an opportunity, I'm going to introduce you or I'm going to put your name forth. I think that's the least you can do, actually.
Absolutely. You spoke about women and recognizing talent. And, you know, I'm going to shift a little bit and talk a little bit about industry movements and trends, which I am pretty sure in some way, shape, or form, you had a lot to do with what I'm about to talk about. But you witnessed firsthand two of the biggest movements or explosions, I would say, in our market. You went from Ricky Martin and Jennifer Lopez to now Karol G and Balvin. What, in your opinion, are the similarities or differences between these two explosions?
Oh my God, what a great question. But you know what I think a big similarity is that we forget, right? Because Ricky Martin happened, what was it, 1999, no?
1998.
That's 23 years. And you still think Ricky Martin is the same age, but of course, you know, he's grown older. I think that they were all youth-driven movements. And I think there was a big gap when Ricky came out. I'm remembering now, I was actually at the Herald still. And when he came out with Living La Vida Loca, there was a record signing. This is when there were still records. And I went to cover it. And there was this humongous line in South Beach, like it went on for blocks. And it was full of these little teenagers. They had definitely skipped school to be there. They were like screaming their heads off. It was completely youth driven. And then we have this whole reggaeton explosion. And I think that what reggaeton did was that it tapped into this whole youth market that really hadn't had something to latch on for a long time. You know, we had like that Latin explosion and Shakira and Ricky and Jennifer, and they were all appealing to a very young audience. We forget that. We forget that it was teenagers what was propping them up. And then you have, you know, a long time where there was really there wasn't a new generation of artists that were young appealing to this youth market in Latin music. I don't think in a big way. And with reggaeton and urban music, I think there was finally a movement, and now you have a very engaged young community. Completely different kind of music, of course. You know, urban music it's more street derived. And I think also that it appeals to men and women, whereas the pop from before was more female oriented. So I think that that's a great advantage of reggaeton. You go to concerts and there's guys and there's girls and they all know the songs. When you went to a Ricky or Shaq concert, it was more of a female audience. Don't you think so?
Yeah, yes, I agree with you. I am guilty of going to Ricky Martin concerts. I mean, who doesn't want to go? But yeah, tienes razón. O sea, la verdad, si ves los dos movimientos, las similitudes son, la base es la misma, sí, pero el tiempo es diferente y el género ha cambiado.
Sí, el género totalmente ha cambiado. Es un género urbano, es un género rítmico, es un género más de calle. La letra es diferente. La letra no es tan romántica, pero by the same token, sí creo que hay cabida para una letra más romántica. Lo que pasa es que la música es cíclica, you know.
Sí.
Pop is hot one day, then dance is hot, then rap is hot, and then no one wants to listen to rap and everybody wants to listen to EDM. That's just the nature of the music. It's people's taste changing, and we have to change with it.
Agreed. Y hablando de cambios, Leila, ¿cómo es que fuimos de Miami Herald, de Los Angeles Times, de Billboard a escribir libros? ¿Cómo fue este cambio? ¿De dónde nació la inspiración y el deseo de escribir y contar historias de otra manera?
Ay, Alex, that's my real passion, debo decir. Y empecé a escribir mi primer libro cuando estaba en el LA Times, porque todo el mundo en el LA Times estaba escribiendo un libro, which is actually super important, because otra cosa que yo veo en nuestro ámbito latino que faltaba y que ahora cada vez hay más is examples. We were talking about women. How important is it to have an example to follow, right? De decir, wow, look at Alex Flores, man. She's in charge of all creative for BMI. I can do that. But when you're a woman and you see no one there, you don't, no se te ocurre. And then likewise with books, you know, I grew up in Colombia. I knew no one who wrote books. Like, I mean, I knew there was Garcia Marquez, pero era Gabriel Garcia Marquez. Like no one was, the thought that you could like be successful as a writer, as a novelist it was insane, you know, like no one was doing that. And so I went to the LA Times and all my colleagues, everyone was working on a book. And I thought, oh my gosh, I have to write a book too. Like I'll write a book. And I started to write a book. And of course, this wasn't so easy. It took me,
Easier said than that, for sure. How long did it take you to write your first book?
oh my God, years and years, because I decided to write a novel. It took me years. And then I thought, and I'm telling you this long story because I think it all goes to examples and mentors and women helping women. And I thought, I wrote 5 chapters. I had like the idea of the story in my head. I finally like was able to write, no, nothing. I had the idea of the book. And so I called the only person I knew who had published a book, who was this woman called Chiqui Cartagena. Do you know Chiqui? She used to work for this. So I called Chiqui and I said, you know, Chiqui, I want to write a book. And she said, okay, well, you know what? I'll connect you with my agent.
Okay.
Go speak with him. And I called her agent thinking the guy was going to say, oh, great, write a book and we'll go sell it. He's like, well, first you have to write the book. He said, do you have the book? And I'm like, no, but I have the idea for the book. And he's like, I can't, you know, who are you? So I had to go write the book. And then work with, he was so nice, you know. God, people have been nice with me, Alex, I gotta say.
La buena energía trae buena energía, Leila. La buena gente trae buena gente.
Te digo, yo he tenido una suerte impresionante, pero este tipo, Alfredo Santana se llama, se sentó, we worked on this book, and that's how I finished my first book. It took me years. It took me like 5 years to finish the thing.
Wow.
And then I finally sold that book. And then, of course, I had to do the second one. And then I got to say, I started to do the music books. I did the Jenny Rivera book.
Sí.
And then my last one is my Decoding Despacito. And I've been trying to get back to my novel and I haven't been able to. And I did try selling. I've had like 2 novels that I've written the first 4 chapters. I have had no takers, but I will finish my novel and it'll become a bestseller.
Ponlo en el universo, tirar al universo, ya verás que sí, right? La ley de la atracción, 100% y sin duda. Pero you have a book there that I really want to dive into a little bit more. Decoding Despacito. Hablando de explosiones, hablando de, ¿verdad? De movimientos dentro de esta industria. Esta canción vino y cambió todo dentro de nuestra industria. Se convirtió en la canción.
Sí.
¿De dónde sale la inspiración de hacer este libro? Y explícanos un poquito, háblanos un poquito de, yo me imagino que tuviste que hablar con miles de gentes y realmente ver el proceso de una manera muy, muy íntima para poder, tanto detalle que das acerca de la canción. ¿Por qué nos dices un poquito del proceso?
Sí, el libro es lo que llamamos en journalism un oral history, que es algo que hacemos mucho en Billboard en los aniversarios de las canciones. Nos encanta hacerlo, donde we go to the people that had to do with the success of the song, el compositor, el productor, el artista, el ejecutivo disquero, la gente como clave, and they walk us through the process. Y es fascinante because you hear it from different points of view. So it's not just from one person talking about the creative process. You also hear the perspective of maybe the radio promoter that says, oh my God, I heard that song and I thought that's really going to work in radio. So I love doing that. Y me habían pedido, The Penguin is the publisher. And they called me because they said, we want a history of Latin music. And would you be interested in writing this? Which is unusual. Usually you pitch publishers, they don't pitch you. But in this case, they were looking for something to do with Latin music because Latin music was so hot. You know, Despacito this was just post Despacito. And I remember I said, I would love to do that. but we need como que darle la vuelta, because I didn't want to sit down to write a history of Latin music. I thought that is so dense and so complicated, and you need to narrow it, or else this is going to be like 5 volumes, right? Or 10 or 20, yo que sé. And in thinking about it, I thought, what if we tell the history of Latin music, pero through songs, through the history of individual songs? And I sent him a sample chapter because I had just been writing about Despacito. So I sent him a sample chapter. I took all my interviews that I'd done with Despacito, which were with everyone involved. And I built a chapter. Y se lo mandé, le dije something like this. And he loved it. And he said, oh my God, I love this. I feel like I'm there in the creative process. Porque empieza con Luis Fonsi hablando de how he woke up. He had the song in his head. Then Erika Ender comes in and she's like drinking her coffee and they write the song. And then they show it to Mauricio and Andres, the producers. And they're like, you know what? It'd be cool to have some reggaeton in here. And so they start thinking who's going to be the reggaeton artist. Like it's a great little story. It's a great big story, I should say. And so my editor loved it, and he said, okay, let's do this. And then after that, the trick was which songs and how do you connect it? So each chapter is a song. It starts with Feliz Navidad, which was exactly 50 years ago when I wrote this book, which was 2020. And it ends with Rosalia's Malamente. And each song has a reason to be there. You know, these were big songs.
Yep.
These were songs that we felt had really kind of changed the trajectory of Latin music and had somehow made it more present in the world. So there's a reason why it's these songs. I would have made it a longer book, Alex, quite honestly, with more songs, but I had to finish the book. And so I iba a acabar.
Si no, todavía seguirías escribiéndolo. I mean, we have so many wonderful songs.
Every time I started a chapter, I would be like, oh, okay, so Elvis Crespo, I interviewed Elvis, I interviewed his producer, I interviewed the record label, and then someone will say, oh, but you should speak with the guy who, I don't know, did the trumpet in esta canción, and then you start looking for that guy, and then you can't find that guy, and then someone says, ah, no, pero you should speak with, so it reached a point where I was like, no, this is, ya, esto se acaba ya. No meto a nadie más. I think I interviewed 75 people. The other day I counted them. It's like I said, yeah, enough. I can't interview everybody for everything. I will never finish. It's like the musicians, they always say that the hardest thing is to know when the song is done or when the album is done.
You put together an album in your case, so it's knowing when the album is done and turning it over to the record label without saying, oh, wait, send it back. I have to add some more.
That's how I was feeling. I like it reached a point where I'm like, I'm not reading this anymore. This is done. This is done. Se cerró la puerta. It's nada más entra aquí. But I feel that other things could have gone in. Yeah.
Will it be a 2.0, a Despacito, Decoding Despacito
I
2.0?
believe so. Yes, we are in conversations.
Look at
And there's
that.
going to be a decoding, it's not going to be called Decoding Despacito, but there's going to be a series based on the book.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Congratulations. That's amazing.
You heard it here first, pero
Yes, we did. We got
when I have details, I'll give them to you.
la primicia aquí con BMI y LALIFF. Oye, mi Leila, bueno, vamos a regresar un poquito a lo que hablábamos antes acerca de esas personas tan importantes en nuestra carrera y en nuestra trayectoria que han estado con nosotros o que nos han abierto alguna puerta. O quizá a alguien a quien nosotros hablamos o le llamamos o queremos ver cuando las cosas se ponen un poquito difíciles o turbulentas, digamos. Who do you turn to? Who mentors Leila Cobo? Who is Leila Cobo's mentor or support or guide or whatever you want to call this group of people or person that you turn to when the going gets tough?
Oh, what a great question. I have to say in the industry, I have a handful of people that I call for advice. or to get their perspective on things. And they're people that I think are very objective, who obviously are out for themselves, because I think we all are in this industry, but I think can be objective and can like take a step back, and they understand the industry. And I think they're very, tienen mucha integridad. So there are a couple of people that I call and I bounce ideas off, and I trust very much. And then, of course, I bounce ideas off my husband, who's a like you know, he's a musician, he's a recording artist. So a lot of times things that have to do with the creative side, I definitely bounce off him. I'll be like, well, what do you think of this? Like, would you have done it this way? So, and we don't always agree, huh? But
Well, that's good too, though. That is good too, because that's a trusted source that's giving you a completely different point of view, perhaps that, or an answer that you were not expecting.
yes, exacto. But I love having Arthur because I understand a lot about the musical creative process. I'm a classical pianist, like you said, but that's a very different world. And so the whole recording process, the whole creation process, like the whole process of taking a piece from inception to release is something that I learn a lot from him. So I ask him a lot of things. And then in the industry, yeah, I have a couple of trusted names. And then I have a sister that I call for a lot of things. I'll be like, what do you think of this? Like I call her for the big life questions. Yeah. And she's like you, she has like, she's a surgeon. So she's like super like, you know, she rules her roost. And she's the one who always says, no, you go and you ask for it and you fight. Like she's always taking that stance. So I'm like, okay, yes.
I love that. Sounds like you have a very good team and support system around you, which is so important in this industry and in any industry, to be honest. Sometimes you just need.
I want to ask you a question because you have this very important job. So what was your big break? I'd love to know.
Oh, wow. Okay. You know, I like you, I had multiple big breaks. You know, I worked my first job I got after spending a weekend at Kinko's, sending resumes to everybody that I could possibly imagine would hire me. And there were 3 companies that would work with me because I was a student at the time. I was on my last year of grad school. And I really needed somebody to work with my schedule. And there was this one company where they represented film composers and music supervisors and music editors. And they gave me my first job. And from there, I was able to learn a lot about the business. And my boss at that time had me reading contracts and understanding contracts and interpreting contracts back to him because he wanted to make sure that it's not just the creative, it's also the business. We have a responsibility to the creators that we work with to educate them and help them protect their craft. So he was and is still a great mentor. And then from there, I went to work for Jose Bejar, who we both know, and that's how we met. And you know, Jose taught me there's, you know, you really have to look at a lot of possibilities and look at things from many angles before a decision is made. Take a step back if you need to, process, take a moment, and then come back to the situation. Which, you know, in a rapid moving world like the one we live in, sometimes that's unheard of, to just pause and really think things through before you make a decision, you know. And my first mentor, and this might sound a little cheesy, but it's true. My first mentor is and was my mom. My mom always said, be a woman of your worth. All you got is your integrity. If you say no, it's no, and you got to stick to your guns. So think about it when you say no. You know, she was always and is always very vocal about, and who I turn to too, with problems or concerns, or if I want to explore an opportunity, like when I was speaking with BMI, and I said to her, this is the chair that allows me to tap into all of my experience in my career. And she says to me, this sounds like an amazing opportunity and you seem and sound excited. So why wouldn't you pursue it? And that gave me that calmness, Leila, de verdad, to be able to say, you know what, I'm gonna jump, because it's scary, you know. And speaking about motherhood and having children, it was the first time I was moving companies as a mom. And that adds another layer of,
Yes, it does.
of perhaps concern. And, you know, I had a very candid conversation with my boss at BMI, and he made me feel so comfortable and really reminded me that this is a company that values women. You know, our former president and CEO is Francis Preston. And when I look at the executive team and when I look at my team, I get to see a lot of wonderful women that are killing it and opening doors for the next generations. Some of them are working moms. Some of them have, you know, are moms to four-legged creatures that I also love. And I'm also a mom to a four-legged creature. Some of them are aunts, which is, you know, in our culture, an aunt has the same responsibilities as a mom sometimes. So yeah, that's kind of how it all started. It was my first boss that kind of really stayed with me throughout my career and still there. And like you, throughout my path, I've been able to grab those people that have, I know have my best interest at heart.
How important, isn't it, right? That, again, about the importance of creating connections and keeping connections. It's such a trite word, right? Networking. You need to network, but you need to network. And you need, I think, more than networking is you need to find your people and stay with your people and be a woman of your word, so that 10 years from now, even if you don't speak to your first boss back then, you can still pick up the phone and say, hey, I have this issue. What do you think? And they'll take your call because you left on good terms and you did what you needed to do properly. That's so important.
I agree. And I'll tell you one thing, my first break, the first project I ever worked on was Arthur Hamlin's record. And he,
oh my God, en Fonovisa.
En Fonovisa, estábamos en Univision y él me dejó trabajar en su primer proyecto con Fonovisa en aquel entonces. Y that, you know, that meant a lot because he trusted me with artwork, you know, liner notes, sequences, so many things. And, you know, I was like, are you sure about this? This is like my first time putting together a record. And he definitely was very generous with the access that he gave me in his first baby with Fonovisa. That was amazing.
Wow.
No me voy a olvidar jamás. Jamás se me va a olvidar. Well, Leila, before we finish, I do want to ask you a question that really came to mind earlier this morning as we were prepping for our panel. And as I was thinking about all the wonderful things that you've been able to do, all the people that you have been able to meet and interview and write about and write for, and the places you've been and the initiatives that you have created, most recently, Escúchanos, Míranos, which was an amazing event. Y espero que haya otro el año que entra, porque la verdad es de esos eventos que realmente set the stage for the next generation, to your point, y abre más puertas. Así que felicidades porque ese fue un evento increíble y mil gracias por incluirme.
Y para los que están mirando, era un evento donde invitamos a líderes, era un evento muy pequeño, invitamos a líderes de la industria que fueran mujeres y les pedimos a cada una que trajeran con ellas a alguien que trabajan para ellas that they're mentoring o alguien that they're mentoring. Y eso me pareció tan importante porque siempre hacemos estos power lists and these big dinners and these big awards y siempre la gente que está ahí es la gente que está arriba. Pero queríamos en este evento que la gente que viene esta segunda generación también tuviera la oportunidad de ser, to have a seat at the table, actually, quite literally, because we had dinner.
Exactly. The feedback that I heard from that event was nothing short of fantastic. And I think people really appreciated you providing that platform, especially for the mentees. I think you went a long way because they got to interact with other leaders and with other executives and create their own relationships and form their own path.
Important. It's so important. It's so important to know that
Yes.
that there's someone allí and that you can pick up the phone and reach someone.
Absolutamente. Pues Milena, regresando a la pregunta, porque ahí te va. Is there someone that you have not yet interviewed, or is there a box in your career, something that you are yet to do? And if so, what is it? Or who is it?
Okay, oh my God, there's many answers to this question.
Give us a few.
Primero, so if anyone out here has his ear, by all means, go. I have not interviewed Luis Miguel. And this is incredibly frustrating for me. I want to interview Luis Miguel. I can't believe I haven't interviewed Luis Miguel in my entire career. And every year I try to interview Luis Miguel and no se me ha dado. So if anyone has that contact over there con Luis Miguel, reach out to me. I would love to interview him. I think that's a fascinating career. I think he's, I think the person, of course, is a fascinating person. The story is a fascinating story, but I think the musician is a fantastic musician. And I would love to interview Luis Miguel. So that's one. And I would love, oh my gosh, Alex, I gotta say, so these are my two novels. I would be so happy if these novels could become either a movie or a series.
So if anybody out there is a director or producer.
And I have to say, I haven't really pursued it, so I should. But I would love that. I would love that. I always felt that when they were written, they actually did very well, but I think they were ahead of their time. And now, Latin content is something that people are considering. So I would love if that could happen. Those are my two big dreams. And I want to travel some more.
I mean, I would love to see one of your books turn into a series. I think that would be amazing. But with Luis Miguel, we want to put it out there to make sure that if anybody knows somebody, to contact you for sure. You never know. You never know. Leila, gracias por tu tiempo. Gracias por compartir tu trayectoria, tu opinión con nosotros, por darnos un look un poquito más íntimo en quién es Leila Cobo y lo que mueve a Leila Cobo y la trayectoria de Leila Cobo. Eres realmente una inspiración, un líder global, una mujer que abre muchísimas puertas y lo que has hecho ha sido, como decimos en la industria, a game changer. Te deseo nada más que lo mejor. Esperamos que esa entrevista con Luis Miguel y este libro se haga una serie, lo vamos a poner en el universo. Pero mil gracias por compartir con nosotros este tiempo y yo sé que tan ocupada estás y te lo agradezco de verdad de corazón.
No, Alex, gracias a ti, de verdad. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It's an honor to be here.